All right, welcome students, campers. Thank you for being here with us. Again, this is coming down on back end of day 3. So congratulations on working your way through camp. I hope that you've been involved with the Career Explorer Pass, completing questions and just completing challenges so that you can get points and win prizes. We've got a treat for you in our sport marketing session today. As you know, we've got the alumni panels that follow this. I'm just going to share some housekeeping notes at 3 p.m. We've got those alumni panels, and then 4 p.m. we've got the last all-team meeting for the day. So please be sure that you register, get in early, be ready and engaged to share questions and absorb some great content. So I'm going to pass to Brandon to introduce himself and then share a bit about our panelists. Brandon, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Vince. So my name is Brandon DiLorenzo. For all of our campers out there, I am a current student at Ohio University studying sport management and volunteering with Sports Biz Camps today. And my role here is going to be monitoring some of your questions and comments within the both chat and Q&A functions and asking our panelists some of those questions. Remember, this is a professional session, so please keep all questions and comments appropriate. And so without further ado, let's go on ahead and get into our panelists. First up, we've got Jasmine McCrawford from the marketing agency MKTG. We have Bryan Burney from Athletes First. We have Paul Beckles from Converse, and we have Morgan Jenkins from the NBA. So we got a great panel here today. Really excited to hear what they've got to talk about. And Jasmine, if you want to go on ahead and take it from here.
Thank you, Brandon. So thank you all for participating today and electing to tune into our session here on sports marketing. So I want to just quickly kick it to our panelists and have each of them. We'll start with Morgan, Paul, and then end with the infamous Bryan Burney. If you guys can talk us through who you are, where you're from, and what you currently do professionally.
Okay, well, hi campers. My name is Morgan Jenkins. I'm originally from Baltimore, Maryland. I graduated in 2015 from Temple University with a degree in sport management. And I have a minor in business and management information systems. Since 2015, I worked at NBC in the sports division and then in the Hispanic vertical as well, which also includes NBC Deportes, which is the sports Spanish property within that group. And now I'm the associate media manager of digital operations at the NBA.
Cool. Paul Beckles, what about you? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
What's up, campers? Paul Beckles. I am a Philly guy. Most know me quite forwardly as that. Originally born in Barbados, though. But I graduated with a sports management degree like Morgan from a state school in Pennsylvania. I won't say the year because I'm going to age myself a little bit, but it was quite some time ago. But I've had the pleasure of working for some amazing brands, agencies, and just amazing people in this industry. I started out with the Philadelphia 76ers, worked in the NBA for about 6 years. After that, I worked for Learfield IMG for a brief moment, and then I worked in the creative ad agency business working for Steve Stow at Translation. Then had the pleasure of working with Bryan Burney and some other great folk over at Athletes First on the athlete side, also working really closely with the NBA Players Union. Today, I am the global brand director for Converse basketball. So I have the pleasure of kind of leading our charge and being back in the game that we were once synonymous with. So that's me.
Thank you, Paul. Bryan, I'm going to kick it over to you. Tell us a little bit about you.
Bryan Burney, Brooklyn, New York. I've worked in sports marketing for about 15 years now. Was on the media advertising side between CBS and ESPN, and then switched over to the player representation side from Rock Nation. I was at Excel, and now I'm at Athletes First, and I manage all off the field business opportunities for players like Deshaun Watson, Jalen Ramsey, and 4 guys that were drafted in the first round this year as well. So I'm happy to be here. It's good to talk to you guys.
Cool. And then just a brief overview of myself. My name is Jasmine McCrawford. I am born and raised in the Bronx, New York. Go Yankees. And I am a proud Temple University alum. I got my bachelor's degree there from, I'll leave the year out with Paul, in public relations and strategic communications, and then my master's in sport management, and started out working on the college athletics realm in sponsorship and marketing, transitioned to some time on the team and league side, working with the USTA and MSG, dealing with partnerships and events, and transitioned to the agency world, helping to facilitate how brands connect with their consumers through marketing. So I've been fortunate enough to know these individuals on this call and seen them work in a professional capacity, but I wanted to ask each of the panelists, and feel free to jump in whenever the moment hits you, what made you want to work in sports, or more specifically in marketing of sports?
Good question. I'll jump in first, because I oftentimes think about this, what made me want to work in sports. And I think it was in high school. I fell in love with basketball late in my life and just couldn't get enough of the game. And then when I actually had an injury my senior year, I almost thought that like my athletic career wasn't gonna continue on in college like I thought it would. And it was the first time I started to think of like, wait, if I don't play, like what else would I do? What else am I gonna do? And it's when I first started to just think about what that was. And I didn't quite figure it out, but fortunate enough, I did go to, become an athlete, did go to college. But it was when I was in college that for the first time I heard of the major sports management. And right away I was like, yes, yes, sign me up, sign me up for that. And it definitely was a process ultimately to, I think, get to not just where I am now, but landing on the fact that this was the space I wanted to be in. And I'm a little bit of a, if I'm curious enough, if I'm passionate enough, I will follow that. And, I have followed that to get to, I think, the marketing space. And when I got there is when I realized, like, okay, this is where I want to be.
Nice.
And for me as well, I'm a former athlete. I played tennis growing up from the ages of 6 to 15. And oftentimes, like in this industry, a lot of people who work in it were, former athletes. But I played tennis at a very competitive level. I was top 50 in the state of Maryland. I just burned out. And when I stopped playing tennis, I had more time on my hands because I would travel all the time. I got to go to my brother's track meets. I would volunteer, and my athletic director asked me if I would like to be the student representative for our athletic conference. So from there, her mentorship just played a huge impact in my life and my career. And I did that for 2 years. We had conversations. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do with the rest of my life, what I wanted to major in. And she introduced me to the sport management, like major programs across the United States. She hooked me up with people who graduated from my high school who also managed or majored in management in their undergrad careers. And from there, I just went to Temple, interned, fell in love with the business in a different capacity. If you had asked me at 18, I would have been dead set on working in events. And once I learned more about the industry and I got more experience and knowledge, I just loved the digital media aspect of it. So yeah, that's how I pretty much got started.
Cool.
So my start, not nearly as impressive as theirs or as focused, but I actually, when I was in high school, I didn't really know what I was going to do. I knew I had a good rap, but my athletic skills were nowhere near as good enough to take me past high school sports. Mm-hmm. But I loved sports, and that was one thing that always was consistent my whole life. My passion for sports never really changed from a young kid. I was always really good at hyping up my friends at the basketball court at the park, but I probably had the worst jump shot in the park. But I was good at I knew I had something going. And a friend of a friend actually told me that I needed a college degree. So that's actually what motivated me to go to college, to be honest with you. And from there on in, I got an entry-level opportunity at CBS. It was probably one of the worst jobs I ever had in my life, but it got me started. And then from there on out, I just knew I always had a network, and every job I got from there was because someone else introduced me to somebody else, and I just was never shy about asking to meet different people. Every time I met somebody, I hoped that they would introduce me to 2 other people. And that's really why I'm sitting where I am right now, to be honest. Even this most recent job I got was because one of the players I worked for introduced me to his agent who hired me. So got to work those relationships and not be shy. That's pretty much why I don't know if I answered the question properly, but that's mine's not as – I wasn't as good of an athlete as Paul, and I didn't I definitely didn't have a really good plan until I got into probably junior year of college. And then since then, I just haven't taken a day off.
No, that's real. And that's a lot of people's experiences. Like, I'm with you on that, Bryan. I didn't have the athletic ability to transition to college. That was not my strength. I stand at a tall 5'1", so that's where we stopped.
I'm the 5'1" version of guys. I'm 5'7", so I got you.
But you and Morgan both touched on something that I'm hoping to hear all of your thoughts on, the importance of mentorship and networks and how that played a role into where you are today. So talk to me about some of the mentors you had either early on or some of the influences that your network has gotten to get you where you are today.
Yeah, I'll jump back in. That's a great one. I think it's a lot of everything for me, at least. I was definitely a kid that I just knew I had a love for the game, but didn't necessarily have much else. I got the theories and I got the coursework, right? But in terms of practical experiences, perspective on the industry, understanding how it worked, how to build relationships, a lot of those things that I think, are learned behaviors. Some people definitely do some things naturally well, but a lot of it is still learned behaviors. I attribute a lot to some mentors. And I was fortunate because most of my mentors were people that I think saw something in me and took a liking to me versus me kind of having it in my head that I needed to go find mentors. I honestly didn't even know what that was. I didn't have a mentor growing up. So I didn't know what that looked like, other than, okay, you tell me a bunch of stuff that I otherwise wouldn't know. But one of the things that I learned quickly is that it's very much a two-way street. A good mentor-mentee relationship isn't just about what the mentor is able to provide, but the perspective and the knowledge and the thinking that you're able to provide them is also valuable. So to answer your question in terms of mentors that I've had, I would say my first mentor that I had was a guy who was the head of sales at the NBA for a long time, Murray Kahn. My last semester of college, I went to a sports business conference at Robert Morris University in Pittsburgh, which was his alma mater. And literally just happened to sit next to him at a table. We started talking, and Jasmine, you'll appreciate this. We got into the conversation because he referenced the Yankees, being a Yankees fan.
There we go.
I'm Philly everything. Fortunately, we just lost in the World Series to the Yankees that year. So we got into a nice, healthy conversation. But with that, he got, next thing you know, they were announcing the keynote speaker of the event, and it was him. So right away, just fortunate, right place, right time. I was able to connect with him. He was one of those first people to say, "Hey, you should be working in the NBA." And he helped kind of set up some interviews and some things for me, and I was able to maintain a relationship with him. So I think that if to Burney's point, like if you guys are not shy about wanting to put yourself out there, wanting to have conversations with people, mentorship can find you in organic ways. But once you get one, you have to cultivate it. You got to water that plant if you want it to grow. And then you have to at some point commit to going out and seeking mentors that give you diverse perspectives at varying levels, not just networking up, then begin to network across. Because guess what? Your peers, the people you're sitting, not literally, figuratively at this moment, sitting next to, they may be chasing some of the same things you are, and you're all gonna grow at different rates. And the good news is those that stay in the industry and find success within it, they can be a resource for you down the road. You can support them. They continue to win, they can support you and help create opportunities for you. So, all that being said, I identified Murray as one early on who got me into it. I had some great bosses that taught me a lot. And then probably my two most instrumental mentors in my life. One, I was fortunate enough to work for him as a consultant. and I knew who he was. He didn't know who I was. So kind of once I got that positive feedback of I did a good job, I was like, okay, well, since you thought I did a good job, you know, I'd love to kind of pick your brain, spend more time regular with you. And we were able to build a phenomenal relationship. You know, really successful guy notable for signing Allen Iverson to Reebok. Has done some amazing things in this industry and for the culture. So fortunate enough to kind of have that, you know, help me along the way as well.
That's a real thing that you just mentioned at the end. Like a lot of times, the mentors that are like levels higher than we are, it can go one of two ways. It can be like your first example, like, hey, I just happen to be right place, right time, having an organic conversation with someone that happens to be the keynote speaker, or it's someone that has been your superhero, your idol for a minute, or someone that you just admire professionally. Yep. And are fortunate enough to be in the right place at the right time to create that conversation and ultimately shoot your shot, as they said. Yep. So I think both forms of seeking mentorship are important, and the point about keeping it along your same levels and amongst your peers is important, because here we are today with a group of my peers. Morgan, what about you?
I would say my first couple mentors were very informal. I'm a very shy person, which a lot of people are surprised about. It takes a lot for me to walk up to somebody that I don't know. At the end of the day, I'll do it because closed mouths don't get fed. But it's not an easy thing for me to do. Like I mentioned, my high school athletic director has been a great mentor in my life. Till this day, we still talk on a regular basis. And she really introduced me to the concept of like what mentorship is, why it's important. And from there, through different work experiences that I've had, I've also developed relationships with other people who I consider mentors as well. And I would say, to Paul's point, especially like when you're in a sport management program, a lot of the people who are your peers are also like your biggest network within the industry. What you'll learn is that the industry is very small. So keeping relationships with your peers and people at every levels is really important, because you never know how they'll be intertwined in your path moving forward. Because, for example, my current boss at the NBA, he used to sit right behind me at my old job. And when I got my interview schedule about people who I was interviewing with at the NBA, I saw his name and I was excited, and he really advocated on my behalf to his team. And I think throughout my professional experience, I really look for mentorship for people who look like me. So whether they're a woman or they're Black, is usually like the buckets my mentors had fallen into. And since that experience, I just learned kind of like the importance of diversifying that, I think. And we have a great relationship, and just having somebody able to advocate for you when you're not yet in that room is huge.
I think that's super important, and especially your point about, because I know a lot of people have fallen into that box of like, hey, I want my mentors to be someone just like me, but 20 years from now, or whatever that is. And a lot of the diversity of what mentorship is having people that are in rooms that you're not in, and that may not always be someone that looks like you 20 years from now. And since Bryan, you already touched on mentorship, I want to kind of pivot a little bit and get you guys talking, because a lot of the students and campers here, they want to know about sports marketing and what that is and what that means professionally. So if you guys can like touch on what exactly you do, or some of the highlights of what you've done professionally over the last 2 years, and what's the coolest part about what you do. So Bryan, I'll start with you, and then we'll kick it back over to Paul and Morgan.
Sure. So what I've consistently done my whole career is building relationships with different brands in sports and connecting those brands, to the right sport, or the right, the right moment, or telling their brand messaging. What I do now is connect brands to athletes, to NFL players specifically for me. And I think the most gratifying part of that now is what I'm doing right now is easily the most gratifying part of my career so far. And that, in the past, I'm bringing ESPN millions and millions of dollars in sponsorship, which, was great. It was a great experience, but actually going to a young man and bringing him a brand partnership for a brand that maybe he grew up loving, or he always envisioned himself in their commercial. There's not too much more rewarding than that. We have something that we're shooting tomorrow for one of my clients who's going to be in his first national commercial, and like just hearing him call his mom and tell her how, he's going to be in their national commercial, and his mom loves that product. Like, I mean, it just doesn't really get too much cooler than that for me personally. And that's, and then in addition to that, what I've been doing more in the last 2 years or so is finding equity and ownership partnerships for my athletes, which is something that I've created a little bit of a niche for. A lot of marketers and sports business managers, nothing against them, but they tend to really drive for, the immediate cash, and so that they can get an immediate fee. And one thing that I've been able to do is create trust with my players, where they know I'm chasing a bag for them, but at the same time, I'm creating long-term partnerships for them, whether it be ownership in a casual dining franchise, or a piece of a tech company, where just teaching them, like, we can leverage your name and likeness and star power to create wealth, for a lifetime.
Cool. I love it. Paul Beckles, what do you do that is so cool in the world? Because I've seen it firsthand, so let everyone else know.
Oh, man. Get to do a lot of cool stuff. I'm trying to think where to start. I mean, I think the opportunity that I have is a little bit rare, in the sense of, if you look at the major shoe brands within basketball, Converse, if you don't know, you guys are a little young, so you may not, but Converse is the original basketball shoe. The Chuck Taylor that you would never, ever think about playing basketball in is what everybody played basketball in once upon a time. We were the first sponsor of the NBA, right? All the NBA players wore Chuck Taylors. Will Chamberlain scored 100 points in a game in Chuck Taylors. So our heritage, and you think about how long ago that was, right? Our heritage in the game of basketball is deep. So there's a lot of story, there's a lot of rich history there. And somebody who's definitely look at myself as a basketball purist, I respect and appreciate everything about the game, where it's come from to where it is now. I think the opportunity to tap into those stories and pull them into modern time and tell them in a way is probably the first thing that I think is super cool. So we're always in our archives looking at moments, looking at products that you've never seen and you may not ever see again, but we may choose some and bring them back in a more modern way. And I think one of the example I'll share in that vein is in January, we launched our Breaking Down Barriers collection, where we told the story of the first 3 African Americans to break the color barrier in the NBA, who all wore Chuck Taylors. And we did a very personalized, really dope, really high level quality material, Chuck Taylor, inspired by each of those 3 guys. The first to get sign an NBA contract, the first to get drafted in the NBA, and the first Chuck Cooper to play a minute in the NBA. So again, you think about, just as a Black man who appreciates this game and knows how much we've contributed to the game, to be able to tell this story that most people don't know and otherwise wouldn't. And I think it also is a part of somewhat of a responsibility, because a story like that, again, let me give you some time reference. Like, Nike wasn't even alive as a brand when that moment happened, right? So it's not really a Nike story to tell. So without us, a story like that can easily kind of just be forgotten about. So that's probably the first part, is getting to tell really, really dope stories. And then the second thing is, I think similar to Bryan, is the opportunity to work with partners and athletes in a way that obviously we're aligned in terms of who we want to be, because we're all chasing that, right? So there's a lot of ways and synergies that we can work together. but being able to support athletes and help them grow, develop, evolve is a really, really powerful thing. An example of that, the most recent news, Natasha Cloud, one of our athletes, we announced last month, a WNBA starting point guard of the Washington Mystics. She just won a championship, kind of at the height of her career. She made a decision to forego this WNBA season so she could fight on the front lines for social reform. I mean, a really noble, courageous thing to do. And hats off to her, but as a partner and us saying similarly that we believe in the fight is necessary and change needs to happen, right? Us making the decision and having it supported by the organization to then actually commit to paying her a salary that she was forfeiting by skipping the WNBA season. So again, being bigger than selling a shoe, but really aspiring to be a brand that stands for something, and then being able to take action to do that. A couple cool things. I mean, there's a lot more, but it's really exciting kind of space to be in.
Nice. I've seen your work firsthand, and the Converse story is an exceptional one, and the brand keeps growing into something really cool and amazing, which I'm
Absolutely.
happy. Morgan, how about you?
So specifically, I work in the digital advertisement space. So I manage all digital advertisement that you'll see across NBA, W, 2K, G League, and USAB, including their team sites as well. I manage a team of 2, which is new to me. I've never been a manager before, so that's been a fun experience. I'm also the youngest person on my team, so to manage people who are older than me is rewarding for me, and just I think because it's a testament about how hard I've worked at an early age. What I loved about my program at Temple University is we had to do 2 internships for graduation. One of those internships I did at the United States Olympic Committee. So part of that internship program is you live at the training center. So I was in Colorado Springs. Athletes are there at the same time. You have full access to their facilities, including their workouts, which that was a cool experience. I loved what I did at the Olympic Committee. It's a little different than what I do now, but I actually want to get back to it. So I did website maintenance and development for the Olympic Committee. One of my big projects there was to implement live streaming on their platform, which at the time is huge because this is in 2015. So like, you're probably thinking that's like slight work now, but the technology necessarily wasn't there. And especially to do it at a global scale is huge. So, I mean, moving forward, what I would want to do is do more like product management, working in streaming. So like, for example, ESPN Plus is an example of sports streaming, just because I think that's where the future of digital is going. So, I mean, whereas that's not my job right now, it kind of touches on it because those projects are also revenue driven. So right now I support a revenue driven part of our business with advertisement. I sold advertisement. I did not like it. But that's part of the journey too. Like, to what Bryan mentioned earlier, like, you're going to have jobs that you might not like, but those are really important experiences because it gives you an idea of what you don't like. So when I left NBC and I was interviewing, I was able to articulate that in an interview and ask questions about the work environment and the work that I would be doing, just to kind of verify that I wouldn't be in a situation that I didn't really like. So
yeah. And Morgan, just to kind of clarify what exactly your role is and what I know it to be, you are an integral part, you and your team are an integral part of how all 30 teams and franchises communicate on a digital platform, essentially, right? And you help make recommendations on on what that looks like. So if you are on the Miami Heat's website and best practices from there, and you can take to the Chicago Bulls and et cetera, right?
Yes. So thank you, Jasmine. That is a huge part of my job. I do what we call audits. So I give best practices to other teams. I do travel a lot in my job. So usually I'm traveling once a month to a different team, which really stinks for COVID because I love that part of my job. I was supposed to be in LA 2 weeks ago, but like my second week at the league, they asked me if I wanted to go to Orlando to help co-host their what we call our workshop series, where we give teams this feedback. But I love to travel. Part of my job doesn't really interface with the big tentpole events at the league, so I'm not necessarily going to All-Star. There is a program where you can volunteer to help people whose departments do support those events. But so I do provide a lot of data analytics and recommendations to teams as well.
Cool. So I think there are a lot of perks, and we kind of joked at the beginning of this and about to get started. But like, what are some of the things that 16-year-old folks watching, 17, 18, and even some college freshmen and sophomores, what is like the cool factor of your job that people don't really get to see, or that you didn't know would be associated with how you make money at 17? Bryan, I'll kick it off to you since you started off the work perks conversation.
I mean, you gotta have perks. This is, we all need to deserve the fruit, right? I don't even know where to start with that, because so much since I'm 17-year-old me, man, it's a scary sight. I think I guess to try to not take too much time on you guys, it's the places I got to go, the people I got to meet. College was like my first little step of leaving Brooklyn, and then I went to college in South Carolina, and that was like even new, like a huge difference for me. But now through my career, I've gotten to leave the country. I never even left the East Coast before I was 25 years old, 26 years old. So the travel, meeting different kinds of people, learning from people I want to be like, people I don't want to be like. I mean, I think that's a perk of its own right, of just getting in front of so many different people that maybe I thought were really killing it, and they were people I wanted to be like. And then I learned there was actually things I don't want to do, and I got to meet, just meeting so many different people as you go up the ladder is just such a fascinating, valuable experience. But again, from sticking to the perk thing, just the events I've gotten to go to and the different cities and countries I've gotten to go to through this is just been something that I can never put a price on. And then just to kind of sum it up, I kind of said this already, but building the relationships with some of the clients that I've built with, it's become family, and that's just such a perk to me. Like hearing my 5-year-old daughter, who doesn't have a single clue about what the NFL is. I'm pretty sure she doesn't even know what Deshaun Watson does, but she knows he's cool, and like she can't wait to say hello to him on FaceTime. Like that stuff is just so cool to me, of building these relationships with these guys who just regular people, you know what I mean? I know it sounds cliche, but it's fact.
Yeah.
I agree.
I definitely agree. Paul, what about you? Any cool perks of being you professionally?
I mean, like Bryan said, I mean, be honest, there's a lot. Like the thing that probably attracts most about this industry is whether they have a connection because they played or they enjoy watching. Yeah. But there's also this, like, it's also very much entertainment, right? And there's a lifestyle associated with it, and there's a sexiness to that, and there's a cool factor. So as you kind of grow in this industry, you get closer to, I think, that lifestyle. So if I'm talking to my 17-year-old self, and I saw like an event happen, and like who's were there, and like dope cars pulled up, and like, again, this lifestyle, this aura that it has, and you at one point in time could look at that and think like, that's the coolest thing in the world. Like, I don't know what I have to do to be able to get in that room or be at that thing, where it's like, you know, especially, you know, Bryan, who spends a lot of time directly with the guys, it's like you're at that stuff like every other weekend, and you normalize it. Like I spend a lot of time, you know, similar to him. I also have a family, so you know they command a lot of my time and attention. So, you know, there's a lot of events that I've said no to going that like people are like, you didn't go, and I'm like,
17-year-old, you're crazy for not going.
28-year-old me, sorry.
legitimate. And then, you know, I think furthermore, you know, to echo the travel piece too, where like you just never know where you can end up. You know, I've it's crazy to think from China to Europe to, you know, partying in South Africa. You know what I mean? Like work has just kind of taken me to experiences that I would have never imagined or probably even known how to seek out for myself.
I think the travel piece, at least in my experience, has been the most valuable because a lot of places weren't even on my radar to like think to want to go, or to even think that there would be something of value or interest to me, just because not even just from where I come from, but just where my interests were personally. But having the opportunity to go to these places and these cities, like somewhere I thought I'd never be, just from like Portland, Oregon. I didn't think there was anything that no offense to the students from Portland here, but I had one of the most interesting experiences of my life in Portland through work that I probably never would have been going to otherwise, and then even international travel and the rest of it. But I agree that like a lot of things become normal that were once mind-blowing at a time in my life.
I'll give you one. Sorry, I don't mean to jump back in, but I'll give you one. So I idolize Allen Iverson. The reason I'm here talking to you is because of Allen Iverson and the effect that he had on me, my community, right? I've probably been in the same room with Allen Iverson 50 to 100 times. You know, most of the folk that work around Allen and manage his day-to-day and all that kind of fun stuff are friends and people I know really well. I've literally never once in my life said a single word to Allen Iverson because of like that 17-year-old kid still sees him that same way. But again, like the opportunity and being in this industry has afforded me the opportunity to be shoulder to shoulder with him, you know, countless times.
Yeah. I would to reiterate what everybody said. I'm not from New York, but I live in New York now. So especially working in sports and entertainment, the perks of going to events, and not even events that you're invited to, but your peer group, your network is invited to, and they text you saying, hey, I have a +1 to this. Do you want to pull up? Because my job being digital, and especially not in social media, is not as sexy. Like when you're going to get to like sales and partnerships, and you're directly working in a lot of these events, that like the events that you're invited to. But I do make the most of my network, and I'm glad that people, you know, let me tag along. And when I have tickets to games or something, I'm definitely, you know, try to return the favor. That is one big perk of my job. I can get tickets fairly easily, whether they're courtside, lower level, suites. And when I do travel, it's great that I'm cool with a lot of people that I work with too, who work in different cities. So they'll, like when I went to Memphis, one person that I didn't know too well in college, and I've never been to Memphis before, we had a great time in Memphis, hung out, went to a Grizzlies event, which, I mean, I probably, if I didn't have a personal relationship with that person, I probably wouldn't have been invited to. But I mean, that's also creating your own opportunities as well, and not being afraid to reach out to people who you might not know that well. So younger me probably wouldn't have done that, but you know, you evolve and you grow. So, and also apparel, I do get a good amount of apparel, especially like after events. I know, and my parents have gotten used to me giving them apparel when I come home, and this time I didn't have anything. And they were like, oh, there's not another bag? I was like, no, this is it. So that is one nice perk. I have a lot of apparel that I've collected throughout the years at events that I've attended, or new products that are being introduced. You might get them before they hit the market, stuff like that.
Morgan, I can definitely attest to that. So I remember when I first started working on Super Bowl business, I smartened up and learned to bring in extra bags for like my return so I could have all the swag. And the first year that I did not work at Super Bowl, I got to like watch it in front of a TV with chicken wings and my family. And they were all mad at me because they were like, hey, I don't get my Super Bowl 51 swag.
Yeah.
That is not my business. But I'm gonna kick it over to Brandon. I see we have some questions in the chat, and I want you guys to get involved in the conversation. So, Brandon, what do you have for us from the chat?
Awesome, thank you, Jasmine. Got a great question here about how to, I guess, kind of break into the sports industry if those mentors and opportunities haven't readily presented themselves. How do you make that transition, and how do you seek out some of those mentors and influential people in your career?
That's a great question, because I know when I first graduated from college, it's something that I struggled with. And my approach is a common approach, but I'm interested to hear the rest of the panelists as far as like their thoughts. For me, I went to graduate school. Because I didn't have a network in sports, and I didn't grow up with my dad playing like golf with Dolan or like the Yankees. Like that wasn't a thing. So I needed to create my own network, and the best way I knew how at the time was to go to a graduate program where there was a network of people that worked in sports and were actively giving back to their community. So Temple, I knew, had a wonderful alumni relationship, and to Morgan's point, I have worked in a lot of areas of the industry. My only caveat about going to graduate school to develop that network is it is costly. So I was fortunate enough to find an opportunity through like graduate externships and things like that, so that my school paid for it. And I didn't to get a graduate degree, but that was how I built my network without having one right after college. Paul,
I'll jump in there. Listen, I think that there's no way around. You can't cheat the grind, and that part still, like, they're not mutually exclusive, right? Like, you can have a great network. All right, take it back. You could have a great network and you could be afforded opportunity, but you can still only ever go so far. Whereas, like, if you don't have the network piece, the thing that's tried and true is the grind. And what I mean by that is, like, I break it down into two components: consistent and persistence. And, like, what I mean by that is if there's an industry or a team or whatever part of the industry you want to get into, they do the same events. They have a schedule, a calendar, right? Show up consistently, meet people, see the same people. Like, I can tell you, like, even being in the industry for a long time, there's people that I've met 5-6 years in that I'm like, I've seen you so many times at these different events. And it wasn't until some point we finally had the opportunity to connect in a way that made sense. Or vice versa. Somebody I talk to all the time, I only know them from the social networking scene. And then all of a sudden, fast forward a bunch of years, we're working together in some capacity that makes a ton of sense, and it's easy to do because we have that relationship. So that consistency and persistency is the same way when you're on the ground level. Like, be at the events, talk to the people that work full time there, ask them questions, and just over time, you make it clear what your desires are and how you think you can potentially come in there and help and support. You know, if the stars align, it's like, oh, we need somebody to come in and do, oh, what about the kid that comes to all of the events, right? Like, you kind of got to put yourself there before you get there. And then the second part of it, I think, too, is, like, I always say know enough to have an opinion, because if you do get somebody that takes a notice to you and they want to pick your brain, they want to ask you questions, they want to get to know you or how you could potentially come in and add value, you got to have an opinion. Don't just be there to be there and be doing all of the fun stuff and the cool stuff. Remember that if you're trying to get in, like, keep your eye on the prize and pay attention to things, have a perspective. You get asked questions, share a point of view. Better yet, you do the question asking because you're paying attention to things in a way that they may not be. So yeah, that's my piece on it.
Persistent and persistent. I like that. I might borrow that with credit given to you.
Appreciate you.
Yeah, I would say my school, Temple University, in their sport management program was really instrumental in getting me face time with people in the industry. But also, like I mentioned, like we had 2 internship requirements and then also something called industry related hours. So you could tie that into your job. So I worked at our arena on campus. That's where the basketball team played, but also because I was in Philly, there were concerts at the venue, a bunch of different stuff. But when our dean of students or anybody from the school would send out events, I would be the first person to sign up. So just really being at events. I also attended conferences too. This is something that I want to get back to just because I've had really good experiences in the past. And I haven't, now that I gotten like comfortable in the industry, I don't think I make an effort to go as much anymore. But I mean, there is like a fee that's associated with going to conferences, but if you get creative and you're persistent, you can find somebody who can pay your way. And it's not necessarily you asking for a handout, but there might be a program that the conference host or committee distributes to people. I've written essays. I've stalk people on the internet to get their contact information so I can hit them up. And a lot of my experiences I've applied online, but I've also followed up with an email or reached out in some way, whether it was like email, LinkedIn. I think there is a lot of creativity and persistence that you do need to have to be in the industry, get your foot in the industry, especially like if you're not in an academic program, I would say. I don't want to say it's impossible because it's not, but you definitely need to be like creative and hungry to get your foot in the door.
I like that. 2 words, creative and hungry and consistent and persistent. I'm liking these.
Yeah. I mean, Paul Morgan covered it pretty well. I don't think I need to add too much to that. All I would say is no new friends is just a catchy hook. Like, don't ever go by that. It may be a cool Instagram hashtag, but it's BS because the friends I've made in the last 5 years are the reason why I'm standing. I mean, don't get me wrong. My foundation and my support group of my friends and family I grew up with, of course, were extremely valuable to me. But a lot of my new friends are the reason why I'm standing where I'm standing.
No, I definitely agree with that. And to all of your points about like making sure you are creative and how you find these new friends, and we talked about it briefly during the mentorship piece. It's not about just talking to the people that you think can help you, because a lot of times the person that is the key may not even be the person that you think. Like being very nice to the office manager or the head of housekeeping or the guy that rakes in all the basketballs at the end of the day, that might be everyone's go-to man or woman or person. And just being a good person and being personable and nice to everyone that you encounter throughout the industry goes a long way, because good news travels fast, bad news travels faster, and being known for the rude, standoffish, arrogant, or any of those other negative qualities is not something that you want synonymous with your name in a very small industry. but as we kind of wrap up the timing perspective of this conversation, and thank y'all for participating and sharing your questions that y'all have had, I want to kick it to our panelists and find out, we've seen you talk about your careers, and we've heard all of the experiences that you've had so far, but thinking back to your 17-year-old self, high school self, what is some advice, or not even yourself, but the folks listening in today, what is some advice that you want to leave them with at this pivotal point in their schooling and their career trajectory, because they've taken an interest in starting the career journey now? What advice would you give them on next steps and how to navigate the space moving forward? Paul Beckles, we're going to start with you.
Okay. A couple of things. One is, I would say, I'm struggling. I'm trying to remember who said this, because this is also a stolen phrase, but fail fast and fail often. I think I didn't quite get that and appreciate it until I got older, but like, it's okay to not have it figured out. Most don't, and most that say they do, half of them are lying. So it like, if you think that's interesting, you think it's a great opportunity, and you get it presented to you, try it, go for it. If there's something adjacent and it's not the opportunity you want, don't be afraid to dip your toe in that water, and then that experience can translate. Right? So it can ultimately still help you get to where you want to get to, and not only get there, but show up with value that you can add because you have a different perspective. So, like, fail fast, fail often. And the second part of that is, this is my personal opinion, but follow your passions. If you don't like it, you're not interested in it, don't feel like you have to do it. Don't not listen to what makes that thing tick, gets you really excited, you can't shut up about, can't stop thinking about. Like, follow that.
I appreciate that. If anyone else, Morgan, I see you came off mute. Do you have some gems that you want to drop on the folks here?
I think I might have said it just because I say it often, because it applies to so many areas of life, but closed mouths don't get fed. You're your biggest advocate at the end of the day. Opportunities aren't just handed in your lap. You just have to go outside of your comfort zone and make those opportunities happen for yourself. Also, like, I know from a scholarship perspective, when I was in school, I got a lot of money once my financial aid package wasn't hidden when I got my acceptance letter, but I racked up a lot of money once I was in school for different scholarship programs that I applied to. I was very fortunate because my academic advisor pulled me in second week of school and was like, "Miss Jenkins, why didn't you apply to this?" Especially because we had a conversation even before I went to Temple about me needing the financial aid and scholarship money. I was like, "Oh, I didn't think I was qualified." He's like, "You got to get that out of your mind." Because I read the description, I didn't think I was qualified, and he was just like, if it's an opportunity or something that you really want, you might not be qualified right now, but at least reach out and see how you can qualify moving forward. Or it doesn't hurt to apply. Somebody can just tell you no, or you not reach out to you to schedule that interview. So that was a valuable experience to me, and it's something that I try to advocate for myself moving forward, because closed mouths don't get fed. If you want that promotion, if you want that raise, it's not given to you, it's earned. It might be given to you in some instances, but more often time than not, you're putting that plan in motion.
Yeah. I think the advice for me that I wish I would have followed sooner. I don't think I really followed it until I was like 30. But like a phrase that I've always gone by is disregard the doubters and forgive the haters. I think the biggest mistake I made early on was like always try to prove someone wrong instead of just proving myself right, and people that believe in me, proving them right. Instead, I had this obsession of proving people wrong and impressing people that don't matter. That's one thing the biggest change I made, and my career just went to another level once I did that.
For sure. Yeah, the whole let the haters be your motivators thing, we can take our own twist on that, and
you take your own twist. Yeah, but I think that one of the mistakes I always made was like obsessing over, who am I going to prove wrong next, and how am I going to show them they're wrong, and waste of time.
No, I feel
positive energy.
Exactly. And then I'll leave y'all with my gem of mastering the art of a pivot. Where you start doesn't have to be where you finish. I've started at a lot of different places. Like Morgan said, we work together at that venue on campus, and at every point, like I learned something new. I'm like, oh, well, this is a different part of that. Let's pivot that way. Okay, let's pivot that way. So mastering the art of the pivot is like the biggest piece for me, and knowing it's okay to try something new and take that leap of faith if it's something that you think you're passionate about, and have the desire to learn more and dedicate your energy toward. But I want to thank our panelists here today: Morgan Jenkins from the NBA, Paul Beckles from Converse, and Burney from Athletes First, Bryan DeLorenzo from Ohio State with our student questions, and Vince Pearson. I want to kick it back to you to wrap things up, but thank you all for participating and listening to us speak.
Now, Jasmine, and thank you for so masterfully handling this panel. Thank you so much for moderating. Again, students, campers, you just heard from experts in the industry how things get done. I hope that you took great notes. We've got our 3 p.m. sessions getting ready to start, so please get on over to those. We will see you there. Thanks again, panelists. Have a great day.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.